So good morning. My name is Deandra Coleman. I'm with the Virginia SBDC Network. For those of you that are not familiar with our organization, Virginia SBDC is a partnership program between the U.S. Small Business Administration, George Mason University, and local host institutions throughout Virginia. With 27 locations across the Commonwealth, we provide training and technical assistance to small businesses in their local communities. Our one-on-one consulting services are available at no charge. Today's webinar, Patents, Learn How to Conduct a Prior Art Search, is presented by the Virginia SBDC in collaboration with the United States Patent and Trademark Office, and is the third in a series of 4 webinars with the USPTO. We are recording today's presentation and it will be posted on our website, virginiasbdc.org. Due to the large number of participants, everyone's microphone is muted. But if you have questions during the presentation, you can type those into the Q&A box. If we're unable to get to your question, you can email us after the webinar and ask your question there. And now it is my pleasure to introduce our presenter for today's session. Cynthia is a part of ASRC Federal and has been a member of the Information Technology Resource Provider since July 2003. Cynthia has a master's in Management Information Systems from George Washington University. Prior to joining the ITRP program, Cynthia has held several jobs in training computer software as well as software development. With a BS in math and computer science, Cynthia brings a solid IT background coupled with significant experience in software development and training. Please join me in welcoming our presenter for today, Cynthia Sadrowski.
Hi, good afternoon. And in my capacity at the Patent Office, what I do is train new patent examiners on how to use the software that the Patent Office uses, as well as provide a technical support to the examiners. And in doing so, one of the courses that we teach is searching and how to use the software that the Patent Office provides the examiners to how to search. So with that background, I will go ahead and talk about patent searching and why do you need a patent search. So we're going to be talking about the tips and tricks for patent searching, and in doing so, we're going to be providing a suggested 6-step process. In doing so that you can find out if your idea or invention is new, novel, and non-obvious. So we'll be talking about why to search. We'll be talking about keyword searching, which I'm talking about is doing text searching, okay? And I know you all do that, but that's fine. But we're talking about what you need to think about when you're doing text searching. In addition to doing text searching, you can also be searching by what we call classification. Classification is similar to what you do, when you go into a bookstore or into a library. They have a Dewey Decimal System that you're all familiar with that you use to find books. They're just not stacked somewhere, and you just have to fumble through the stacks. And so the Patent Office also has a classification system. And the classification system that we are now using is called CPC, or the Cooperative Patent Classification System. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. Any of our audience who are inventors prior to 2015, you might be familiar with the USPTO has a US patent classification system. And we'll talk a little bit about that system as well, but mostly focusing on that CPC. And then I talked about that we will provide a 6-step process and give an example of how you may want to use this 6-step process when you are providing your searching to find out the novelty of your invention. So any kind of documentation, patent numbers that I may reference is for illustrative purposes, and it's not anything that the Patent Office supports. Okay, so definition of what a patent is. So what you're doing is when you apply for a patent, and if it's granted, what it is that the U.S. is granting you the property rights to your idea. It's only for the United States, okay? And it excludes others from making, using, or offering for sale, etc., your invention throughout the United States. and it is for a limited time. Though if you ever want, you can, sell your, patent to someone else so that they has that right that you have been granted. All right, so what's the purpose of even wanting to apply and get your invention patented? Well, in doing so, as I said, you will be protected from others making, using, or selling your idea. But in doing so, your patent needs to be either new, useful, or non-obvious. And what I mean by non-obvious is, let's say that I want to invent a pen. Well, I'm assuming that all of you have a pen somewhere, if it's not in your hand already, somewhere close to you. And so, but what I want to do is, in honor of being St. Patty's Day yesterday, I'm going to invent a pen that writes in my tartan color. And so therefore the pen will have various inks coming out, and it will write in various colors at one time. Well, maybe that's not, maybe because we have pens who do write, in different color inks, and being able to write with more than one color at a time, maybe that's obvious for pens that are already out there. And so therefore, maybe it's obvious that you can go that direction. It's not going to be something that I will make that decision on. That will be between you as the applicant and the patent examiner as they examine your application. Okay, so so non-obvious is something you may want to be considering as you are looking at your idea or your invention as you're doing searching. So again, new, useful, and non-obvious are what you're going to be looking for your invention. All right. So there's going to be several steps that you will be following as you apply your invention to the patent office. And what we're going to be doing right now is focusing on determining, is your idea or invention, is it patentable? And that's what we'll be focusing on today. Okay, so you'll hear the term prior art. And prior to working at the patent office, to me, when somebody talked about art, I was thinking of the Mona Lisa or something like that, or a sculpture. And so here, the word art has to do with your idea, concept. It doesn't necessarily refer to art as a painting or a drawing or a sculpture. It just has to do with any kind of documentation, literature, web site, or whatever that has already is in the public venue, and therefore you can't patent something that is public knowledge. And so that's what you need to be looking for, is how is your invention different than what's already out there in the public. We'll be talking about, I talked about you're going to be doing text searching. And we're talking keyword searching, but there are some things you need to think about when you are developing your query using your text, and we'll talk about that in a minute. I'm also, as I mentioned, going to be suggesting that you also incorporate a classification search as you're conducting your search, and I'll explain how you can find out what the classification numbers is that you may want to use in doing your searching. All right, so as I mentioned, prior art is going to be any kind of documentation that it discusses or describes your invention. All right, so you're going to want to be looking at, dates. Is your idea the idea of your application, is it preceding by someone else's patent or patent application? If so, then their prior art may supersede yours. All right, and that again, it will be determined based on the patent examiner as they're going to be doing searching as well. And so what you need to do, and you'll want to do, is search to find out what is already out there. So as you write your application and your claims, you want to emphasize how your idea is new, novel, non-obvious, or useful. All right. So prior art, as I mentioned, can consist of lots of things. Today, we're going to be really focusing on searching U.S. patents and published patent applications. And patent applications are published in the United States 18 months after filing, or if the applicant says, please do not publish my application, then you won't find it published at all. But the U.S. patents you will find published. But you also might want to look at or be considerate of foreign patents and their published applications, journals, magazine articles, books, websites, as I talked about, conference proceedings. Maybe you have attended a conference and presented your idea. You have a time limit with which to do that. I believe that is within a year, but you know, you may want to make sure that that is the information is correct, but my understanding is that you have within a year, if you presented your idea at a conference, to go ahead and apply for your patent application or scientific papers. All right, so let's talk about the challenges, what you need to think about when you are doing your text searching. All right, so the first one is talking about vague or inconsistent technology. You're inventing a toy. Well, think about it. If you talk to a child, you know, for their birthday and say, you know, if you buy them any toy, my assumption is they're not going to may not be happy with that. So you might want to be more specific, because especially if you're talking to a child and say, what kind of toy do you want for your birthday? They're going to talk about specifically what doll or truck or ball or game they want. And they're just not going to say, oh, just go ahead and buy me a toy. All right, so you want to make sure that the terms you're using are pretty specific. Also, think about the terms you're using, and are there other terms that are obsolete that you need to be aware of in doing your searching. So, you know, for hi-fi, you know, or as a disc player or whatever, water closet, you know, if you're thinking about doing something, you know, about with a toilet. And also different terms of what the term means. If I said to my mother, rest in peace, that I was going to buy a mouse, she probably would squint and look at me and go, why would you want to buy a mouse? You know, you've got some cats, and, you know, the cats are going to probably attack the mouse. And it's like, no, Mom, computer mouse. Oh, and she won't even know what a computer mouse is. But I also have a real life story that I'd like to talk to you about terminology. My background, as you heard, is computer science. And I was a programmer in prior career. And I have worked on computer terminals. And the word computer terminal now we call monitors, but in the past it was called the computer terminal. And I was working for a company who put me on a project, and the project was terminal consolidation. Well, I knew what that meant. That meant that we were going to take different functions and put them on the same computer monitor or computer terminal. Knew that, was confident about it, went into the meeting with our customer, and our customer turns out to be the FAA, Federal Administration, and Aviation Administration. And their idea of terminal consolidation was taking different functions and putting them all together in one piece of software. And I'm like, oh, so it was a little different than what I thought about computer and terminal. Also, the FAA, to them, the idea of terminal is that huge building that you run through when you're trying to catch your plane. All right, so that's one example. Another example, still of the word terminal, is in my prior life, I was a computer programmer, and I worked for the state of South Carolina, specifically for the Medical University of South Carolina. And we were asked to set up a lab with computer terminals in it so that the students could come in and practice taking their boards before they took their certification exams. So we were like, what are we going to call this lab? Can we call it a terminal lab? Well, in the field of medicine, terminals is a totally different term than computer terminals, than a building that you run through. And we were on, the lab was going to be on the 4th floor, and the 7th floor of our building was the cadaver lab. And so I felt if we label it terminal, we may find a cadaver being rolled into our lab. So terminal, a colleague of mine owned a car repair shop. If I talked to him about terminals, he'd be thinking about batteries, you know, in a car. So, you know, if I do a search on the word terminal, I've got to be more specific. Is it medicine? Is it computer? Is it a car battery? So again, you need to think about the terms that you're using and can they be thought of in other ways. I would probably, number one, be talking to perhaps friends, colleagues, families, and the terms that you're using. Do they understand that term, and what do they think that term means? Also, as you're doing your searching in your art area, what other terms are you finding that you may want to use? Because that'll introduce the concept of synonyms, so that if you are doing a search, you want to be, you know, doing a search on, you know, here, if it's having to do with rodents, you know, rodents or mouse or whatever. So you're going to want to think about those synonyms, and you're going to want to OR those synonyms together. Also spelling, you know, we've got the British who have different spellings of color or the word tire here. So if you're doing, you know, even besides doing synonyms, you may want to do the word color, or color spell O-U-R, etc. Also, patents and patent applications may have typos in them. So you may want to be, as you're looking at it, you know, is repellent spelled A-N-T or E-N-T? Example here of 3-wheeled, tri-wheeled. I'd be calling it a tricycle. That's what I had when I was a kid. So you may want to have 3-wheeled or tri-wheeled or tricycle kinds of things, and developing your search query. And also, if you're going to be using acronyms, not only will you want to include those acronyms, but also spell them out. Do you know what LED stood for? Light emitting diode, or a PDA, personal digital assistant. So make sure that, you know, you're including all these different spellings, variations, synonyms, and acronyms, and spelling them out as you're building your query. Also realize that doing text searching, if you're using patent Googles, which you can do, that only takes you back to searching back to the 1880s. And you may think, oh, well, that's pretty far back. Well, it depends on what you're trying to invent. If you're inventing something that perhaps has to do with shoes, or even engines or motors or plows, they existed, you know, before 1880, and therefore that's not, you know, unheard of, that you may want to be looking and getting, you know, patents that existed before 1880, because the Patent Office was founded in 1790. So there are patents that go back as far as 1790. On the USPTO public website, there is a USPTO search engine, and doing text searching will only take you back to 1976. And that's why I'm going to be encouraging to also do classification searching, because doing classification searching can take you as far back as 1790. We also have the system we call Public East and Public West that will only allow you to do text searching back to 1971. Depending on what databases you use. Again, you can do classification searching only, that will take you back to 1790. But Public East and Public West is not available from your own computer. You would have to go either to a patent office, or major patent or major public libraries in major cities have the computer access to our Public East and Public West. This Public East and Public West system that I'm referring to is the same system that patent examiners use when they're conducting their searching. And the Public East and Public West is proprietary software, and therefore you have to be within the confines of the umbrella of the Patent Office, and therefore you would, it's limited access again. And I'll talk about maybe a little bit more of where you can find those besides going to a patent office, which right now, as you know, is not allow the public in because of the pandemic. All right, so we talked about, I mentioned a little bit before about, so we're finished talking about doing searching using keywords or text. I want to introduce the classification. And I mentioned the Dewey Decimal System that you're pretty much familiar with. The patent office system is also classifies and has to organize their patents and patent applications. I can just imagine Thomas Jefferson, who was one of our first patent examiners, sitting in his office and getting the first patent application, and perhaps it was about what we call a button hook to be able to button up the high top shoes. And so he gets that application and he puts it down, and then he gets another patent application having to do with plows. Well, then does he put that application next to the shoes and then the plows, because to be piled on one top of, so as they were coming in, he had to figure out that he had to organize them. And so we had a classification system. And so up until 2015, the system that we had was called the United States Patent Classification. And we'll talk about that right now a little bit more. So we had up until 2015, the USPC, the United States Patent Classification System. All right. And if you ever have looked at patents or patent applications, you will see those values. But starting in 2013, the Patent Office started working with the European Patent Office, because we realizing we're becoming a global system. And so we have combining with the U.S. Patent Office and the European Patent Office, we created a system called CPC, the Cooperative Patent Classification System. And that's the system and the values that we use ever since 2015. But even though we've only started using it in the US since 2015, the US retrofitted patent applications back and have applied and added the CPC values to the patents and patent applications that were issued prior to 2015, and I'll show you about that. So the CPC is a combination of the US and the European Patent Office, but the value and the format is based off the IPC, the International Patent Classification System. So you'll see that the formatting looks exactly like the IPCs, and they started using the International Patent Classification values, and then have been updating and retrofitting them. And the classification system is very dynamic. Back in Thomas Jefferson's days, he probably did not receive any patent applications about computer terminals, and therefore there would have never been any classification systems about computers. And the first time that a patent application or this series of patent applications came in about computers, they were looked as registers and were classified under a registration type of system, similar to the Jacquard loom that has the card system to be able to determine how the different yarn feeds through, kind of a precursor to the IBM card system that they had. And but then eventually the realization that this computer concept is a whole technology by itself, and therefore at some point the computer system had its own classification values. So just to realize that classification values and systems evolve because our technology evolves. Okay, so we talked about, the CPC is what we use now since 2015. And in looking at those values, you'll see that the very first value of a CPC is going to be a letter. A stands for human necessities, B is performing operations, C is chemistry, and D is textiles, etc. Okay, so it's going to be, you're going to see letters and numbers. The very first one, high level, is going to be, where does your concept fall into? So that's what you want to think about, but we'll be looking at values a little later. But you want to think about, where does your invention fall? All right, so we'll talk more about the CPC values, but what I want to do now is talk about the 6-step process that we suggest you may want to apply as you are conducting your searching, right? Because what you want to be able to do is be able to have a systematic way to do your searching. And making sure that if you covered all the information, searched all the different areas that you need to search in to find out, is your invention and idea new, useful, and not obvious. Okay, so in our example, we're going to be talking about inventing an umbrella, and an umbrella that has a rib design that won't collapse or turn inside out when the wind blows, kind of thing. And when my niece graduated from high school, she was valedictorian of her high school. I was very proud of her, of course, the whole family was, but it rained on the day of her graduation. And so I was helping her, and I had the umbrella so that she wouldn't get wet, and as I'm, holding the umbrella, and I'm so excited and whatever, that I pushed the umbrella, of course, upside down, and now it's gathering the water and not protecting her. So she would have really appreciated having an umbrella that wouldn't have turned inside out. So we're going to be talking about that. If we are inventing an umbrella that does not turn inside out, what do we need to do in conducting that search? Okay, so number one, we want to think about what is the purpose of your invention? And there are several kinds. Is it utilitarian, meaning does it do something? Or is it ornamental, meaning it's only a design? Utilitarian is something having to do with, it has to do something. Let's say that you've got a top on, or a top or a shirt or whatever, and it has stitching, and the stitching is very ornamental. Well, if the stitching is just ornamental, that's going to be a design concept. But if your stitching glows in the dark, that would be utilitarian because it has a use. So design patents examples is the characters from Star Wars. Some of those have been patented, and those are examples of design. So design is how it looks, but it has no function. Utilitarian has a function. And there's also plants. Plant is a third kind of invention. Are you inventing a new rose, a new flower of some sort? Okay, so I'm assuming the majority of you are applying for utilitarian patent, but it could be ornamental. All right. What is the invention supposed to do? Is it how it's made, or what is the product itself? So what are you inventing? And you can only have one idea per patent application. Okay. So if you have perhaps one is making it and how it's made versus what it is, that may need to be 2 patent applications. What is it made of? I'm assuming that if I made my umbrella out of concrete, it definitely wouldn't turn inside out, but I might not be able to lift it. So I'm going to think about, so is it the structure of my invention? How will this invention be used? We talked about new, useful, and non-obvious. So therefore, I have to come up with what are the key words and the terms that I need to do to describe my invention. And you may want to, consult a technical dictionary or thesaurus to find out terms. And as you're searching your art area, take notes and make a list of what are the terms that people are using when you're looking and doing your literature searching, and as well as you're talking to people and they say, oh, so you're talking about, a button hook. Oh, okay, kinds of things. So think about what people respond to you if you're talking about your idea. All right, so here's an example of, we talked about purpose. So we're writing the purpose of umbrella is to be a new rib design to eliminate the collapsing or turning inside out. What our invention is going to be an improvement, so you don't have to buy lots of umbrellas, so we keep on breaking them. Our components are going to be about the rib and the stretchers, and the framing that we're going to be using, perhaps even the fabric we're going to be using, and how we're going to be using it is to protect you from getting wet, or perhaps even from the sun. And so what are the terms? So we can be talking about, we know umbrella. Well, what do people talk about? Parasol, sunshade, you know, a bumbershoot, if you, you know, are familiar with how they refer to it, say in England. And then we need to talk about, so that's the one. And then we're talking about that it needs to be windproof, you know, so windproof, wind resistant, you know, what are some other terms that we can think about? All right, so what we're going to be doing now, step 2 is we want to be, once we've got our terms, the synonyms, we want to OR them. So we're going to have, you know, umbrella, or sunshade, or bumbershoot, or whatever. And then our ORs on synonyms for our wind resistant. So it's going to be windproof or wind resistant. And then we want to take those 2 concepts. Here's an example. It could be more than 2 concepts, but we have 2 concepts and we're going to add those concepts together. And we'll show an example in a minute. And we also may want to do wildcard because we don't want to just umbrella, because we might be umbrellas plural. For wind, it might be, you know, not just windproof, but windproofing or wind resistant. We might be resisting or resisted. So we may want to include wildcards. And what is the wildcard in the system you're looking at? Example, here's asterisk, but others, each system may have their different kinds of wildcards. And wildcards don't have to be at the end of the word, but generally they are. If you want to do a phrase, you might want to put that in quote marks. Or if the system you're using has an operator called ADJ, you may want to be using that as well. All right, and also you may want to be looking at other inventors. Who are your competitors? All right, or even competitors in the name of companies. Is there companies that is your competitor? All right, so here's an example. We're ORing together our synonyms. So we've got umbrella, or parasol, or sunshade. They don't have bumbershoot in this example. And we have asterisks at the end of the term so that we can have perhaps singular or plural or INGs or whatever it may be. And then we probably should have also put asterisks be after windproof or wind resistant. Here we got wind resistant in quote, because we want to look at that as a phrase. But, you know, wind resistant maybe is one word, you know, so maybe we should have had also, or wind resistant is one word and not 2 words, you know, so we could have had asterisks, you know, at the end to come up with the variations of, you know, resistant, because it could maybe resisting, you know, so maybe just do resist asterisk so we can have resisting, resisted in addition. Okay. All right, so step number 3 is now that we've created our query, we're going to be running that search. And what you want to be doing is if you're running your search, you want to be looking at your results. You're going to be looking at not only the terminology, but if your invention is visual, like I can be looking at an umbrella and I can sort of see, well, this is an umbrella, but this is a bag. So, you know, I don't need to look at the diagrams that come back that look at bags because that's not, you know, similar to what I'm trying to do. So maybe, you know, focusing on the drawings and looking at those. Again, looking, you know, so you're going to want to be looking not only at the words, you know, also recording what words you're finding that might be words you've not used in your query yet, or how people are referring to your art area. You know, you may also record what documents have you found, patents, patent applications that have you found. Are you not finding anything? And if you're not finding anything, you may not be in the right area. You may not be using your terminology correctly, or maybe your idea is so unique and novel that there's nothing out there. But I would think that if you're doing searching and not finding anything similar to what you're trying to do, I would probably rethink what terms you're using and how you're composing those terms, because I would say the majority of the time there's probably something out there similar, and therefore, you know, you're not looking in the right area. I think about it as like going fishing. That, you know, when you go fishing, you pick up your poles and, you know, and your tackle box, and you head off to the river or creek or pond or lake, and you start fishing. And if you're, you know, casting and you're not getting any bites on fish, well, do you go home and say, oh, no fish today? Or do you think, oh, I need to go in a different part of the river, or paddle out to a different part of the lake, you know, and then start fishing? kinds of things. So again, if you're not getting any hits, if you're not getting any bites, you may want to look at what your query is. All right, so here's an example, and I will make this bigger, but I'm going to be looking, here's in front of a patent, and this is noticed as an image after 2015, and the reason why I'm mentioning 2015 is that's when the U.S. Patent Office started using the CPC values. Prior to that, they used U.S. patent classification values. So let me make this just a little bit bigger, so I know it may be hard to see, though you might have a copy of this already. And so here I'm looking at, my CPC values. And here's an example of a CPC value. So we've got A45B space 19/00. Those two combinations is one CPC value. All right. Let me make that one again, make it a little bit bigger so you can see it. And so there's one CPC value, there's a second CPC value, and there's three. So there's three CPC values. What I want to mention is that when you do a CPC search, there should be no spaces. So it should be A45B 19/00 in this example. All right, doesn't have to be upper or lowercase b's, we don't care, but you just made sure that there are no values. But notice we talked about A's. Remember, we talked about A's being, it was called human necessities. So this is the format of it. All right, we've got an A, we've got a class, we've got a subclass, group, subgroup. All right, so when you're doing searching, the spacing is there for readability, but when you're doing a searching, remove those spaces, okay? So this is where you're going to start learning about what CPC values should I be using. Cindy suggested that I do CPC searching, and I don't know what values they are. So when you're starting to find the patents and patent applications that are in your area, make a note of what CPC values are there. All right. So this is a patent that was issued after 2015. All right. So let me go to looking at one. This is prior now. This happens to be, let me scroll over here a little bit. This was 2014, and let me zoom in. All right, and we're not seeing any CPC values on the front of this patent. This is an image of a patent. All right, and we're seeing a U.S. value. All right, so this is the U.S. classification example. 135 class 30/31 is the subclass. So this is a CPC, a U.S. classification value, not a CPC value. So you may not find them on the image of a patent. And I said, but I mentioned that they have been retrofitted. Well, they won't be on the image, but what you want to do is you're going to want to get, and let me make this a little smaller here. What you're going to want to do is we want to look at the text version of this. So this is pictures of the words. You're going to want to look at the text version of this. And then when you look at the text version of this, which I will show right now, the text version, this is the same document that we were looking at. When they retrofitted, they didn't republish the image. Oh, sorry, here, let me go back. It went to the next. This is the CPC value. So this is the USPC value, the US classification value. We saw 135/31, but on the text, you will see the CPC value that we saw before. And again, there's spaces between the 45s and the Bs. You would take them all out. And so this is the CPC values. Here's an example of two of them. All right. So CPC values, if you don't see them on the front of a patent, you're looking perhaps at a patent image that was granted before 2015. Okay. So let's say that you want to just to investigate different CPC values. How can I do that? And you can do that. You can do that by going to, this is an example of the Patent Office, the USPTO.gov public website. All right. In doing so, I mentioned that the patent has a public search engine that you can use. And under quick links, we've got PAT full text, or we have application full text. You can click on either of those. This would look at patents only. This would look at patent applications only. But they're only going to, but for text searching, they're only going to go back to 1976. But if you do classification searching, you can go back further. So as I mentioned, here's an example of a CPC value. Notice there are no spaces. We're going to say we want to look at the current classification and do a search. So here's an example of how the value would look when you're typing it in, and we can focus on just looking at CPC values. All right. So let me make this a little smaller for you to see. All right. So so we've talked about classification searching. Now I want to introduce the concept of cited references. Step number 5 is cited references. When a patent is issued, you won't find these on patent applications. You will only find cited references on patents. And when a patent is issued, the office will not only obviously publish the patent itself, the abstract, the claims, the specifications, the inventor and all that. It also will identify what we call references cited. So these references cited, I'm going to make this now bigger. Oops, let me go back. Oh, hold on here. It went out. I don't want to go that far out. All right, so let me go. There we go. And I want to make this a little bigger so you can see it. So you will find, and it's field 56, if you want to be concerned about that. And it's going to be a list of all patents, patent applications, as well as any kind of non-patent literature or foreign patents that were cited by the applicant, because when you apply for your patent application, not only are you going to be writing your abstract and your claims and your specification, but you're going to also be including what area, what art did you find, what documentation did you find in doing your search. And then you're going to be saying, okay, this is what I found. I'm in, and then of course, this is why my invention is new, useful, non-obvious, different from what I found. So this can be documentation that you have submitted. This can be also documentation that the examiner found when they did their search. And if you see asterisks after a value, that indicates that those were the documentation found by the examiner, and the others that don't have asterisks were documentation that you found. So I've got patents here, US patents. Here, the last 3 here, I'll make a little bit bigger, are patent applications. I can tell just based on the number. So a patent application is going to have a 4-digit year and a 7-digit number after it. So I can tell that these last 3 were patent applications. So you can cite patent applications, but you won't find cited references on a patent application, okay? So you may want to do what we call citation searching. Let me look at, what was out there kinds of things. If you're looking at, when you're doing your searching, so, once you get into that fishing air hole and you're getting bites, you may want to look at, what else was out there, and perhaps you may want to look at those documents as well. Patent examiners will look at those documents as well. And that's called citation searching. Google does it, though Google citation searching is a little different than our citation searching within the Patent Office software is being specific. We will look exactly at these values and come up with those, where the Google may take a little more liberty and look at what the Google feels as are similar to in addition to these values. So you may find it a little bit more wide range on that. All right, so perhaps doing a citation searching. All right, and then step number 6 is you may, that once you've done your searching within the US patent and patent applications, or you may have gone out just to do not even Google patents, but just done a Google search just to find out what literature is out there. You may also want to focus perhaps on searching foreign patents and patent applications. eSpaceNet is the European Patent Office. You may want to look there perhaps. Are you looking also to expand your patent application beyond the US borders at some point? But when you're filing in the US, it's only for US protection. It does not apply to applying your patent application to foreign countries. And again, you might want to be doing that non-patent literature search, just regular Google search, against websites and journals and conferences, kinds of things. You also may want to search not only by your the keywords and the classification I talked about in the citation searching, but you may want to search against, as I mentioned, your competitor. What inventors are you finding that your competitors or companies? You may want to do what we call a assignee or assignee search as well. Who are your competitors? Kinds of things to see what they're doing as well. And whether you want to do your own searching, that's fine. Or at some point you want to determine that you might want to hire a patent attorney. Kind of thing. That's a decision that you need to make. I don't know what the fees are for that, but you can always, inquire about that. All right, so if you want to be able to go look up a schema, the CPC schema, this is going to the USPTO.gov public website, and you can do a search there. I mentioned that you can be using that PAT-FT and application FT database for searching, but you can also be searching for the schema. And so we want to see where's umbrella classified, okay? So I'll show you how to do that. So we're on USPTO.gov. Up in the search window, we can do CPC schema or scheme, umbrella, type up there or type down here in the public page. And then you're going to get back a list. And in that list, here we've got, never thought of umbrella being a walking stick, but we've got walking sticks, umbrellas. And when we click on that link, here's our A45B that we're familiar with. That's the high level that we talked about. And here we've got that A45, and it's going to be the very top of our list. And then we may want to scroll down further to get that A45B 19 / whatever kinds of things. And so you may want to, scroll down to see a little bit more about that. So again, they're shown with spaces when you do your search and eliminate the spaces. Also, when you're doing a searching, you can do a classification search with text searching. That is possible. But if you want to get very old or have access to older patents and patent applications, you're going to want to do classification searching by itself. Because as soon as you introduce text searching, then you no longer can go only as far back as text searching will take you. So when you introduce text searching, again, it will only take you back to 1880s and Google patents, 1976 on the full text search engine within the public patent office website, or T71 if you came into the patent office or a public library that accesses our public east and public west. So think about doing classification searching by itself. See the older documents you get, and then, and once you start introducing your text searching, that will then limit how far back you can go. Okay. All right, and here we scroll down, and here's our A45B. Here's an example of 25, 22, and here's about devices for increasing the resistance of an umbrella. So that looks like a classification that I would like to use when I'm doing a classification search. All right, and let me go back one. If you see a D after a value or in front, here we've got a D in front of this, there means that there's more information, there's a definition. Though above it here does not have a D, so there's nothing further you can drill. But here I can drill if I've got a D in front of my classification value. So if I click on the D, it will take me in, and let me make this a little smaller for you. Oops. I'm sorry, something I'm clicking on is taking me out of where I want to be. Let me go back to where I was. All right, All right, so I wanted to get a little bit smaller. So here it's showing that D here is, here's an example. Give me a picture, it may not give me a picture, but it's just showing me a little bit more about what the definition of A45B 25/22 is about. Okay, not all of them have that. I have no idea. I'm clicking something that's taking me out of there. All right, so I talked about if you want to do searching in foreign. So we'll talk about that here with the European Patent Office. The WIPO here is searching International Patent Office that you can access for patent applications that we call CPCs. We talked about searching CPC values themselves, talked about Google Patents. You can do that as well. We talked about searching on the USPTO public website that we have for using those facilities to do the searching. If you would like to access and use the systems that the patent examiners actually use, again, they're at the USPTO offices when they become open to you, or at PTRCs. I'll show you what those are. Patent locations, those are the libraries. If I click on that, I'll show you that in a minute. If you are located in the Virginia area, you can go to the patent office that is in Alexandria, across from King Street Metro stop. You're going to go in what's called, there's a huge complex in Virginia. You would go into what's called the East Building, and then there's a public search room that you can go and search using the East and West systems that are there. And when the office is open, they're open from 8 to 5, Monday through Friday. Okay. You can also call ahead to see if they're opened. Here is the Patent and Trademark Resource Centers. And here in Virginia, there's some libraries and where they're located. If you click on this link, it will tell you where that library is. You have access to that library, okay? And then further on, there'll be follow-up presentations about how to submit your patent once you determine your application, once you determine that it's new, or novel, and non-obvious. All right, for assistance, there's an assistance center that you can call, to do that. So here's those numbers. There is a business center, so if you have, they encourage you to submit your patent application electronically. And so you can do that, and you have questions on that as well. But you can submit it via mail as well. All right, any questions?
Well, thank you so much, Cynthia. That was great information, great presentation. It doesn't look like we have any questions, but that's okay. We can, I throw it out there. If you guys think of something afterwards, I know this was a lot of information. We're going to send out the slides. We'll send out the recording. So if anyone thinks of questions, you can send that to help@virginiaspdc.org. Or of course, use the resources listed in this presentation with the links associated. But thank you so much. You all will also receive an email with the evaluation. And if you would like, you can sign up for more upcoming webinars. We have one last webinar in this series next Thursday, same time, 12 o'clock. You can visit virginiaspdc.org/training. We also have the COVID Business Recovery Center on our site, which we developed to help owners not only continue business operations, but to thrive and recover. These resources are designed to be used in collaboration with your local SBDC advisors, and you could sign up for a free and confidential session by emailing help@virginiaspdc.org or via our website. So that's it for today. If you don't have anything else, Cynthia, we'll say goodbye, and hopefully we'll see everyone next time.
All righty, thank you very much, and good luck in searching and finding and submitting your patent application, and congratulations on being inventor and having those ideas to create and invent. Thank you.
All right, thank you, everyone. We'll see you next time.